You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
Hello everyone, this is Nigel. I'd like to take an opportunity to welcome you to listening to the Mindcast, Me and Paranormal You. I have been producing the Mindcast for over 10 years now. Ryan has not really acknowledged me as a part of the show, but hey, that's neither here nor there right now. So what I can tell you is this. The following episode will probably include, but will not be limited to, Ryan rambling on about things, stream of consciousness, some people say. To me, stream of consciousness has always just been another way of saying, I have not prepared enough material to have clear and concise messaging or formatting for the nature of the program which will be presented. Nonetheless, that's not my job, is to worry about the content or the personality of the show. My job is just to make sure, all the bells and whistles are clicking and clacking, and that it sounds alright. So I hope the sound levels are good for you, and I hope that you enjoy the program. It's not my job to make sure you do that, but, please rate and review the podcast. And feel free to mention how wonderful Nigel is in your written reviews if you feel so inclined. I appreciate you. I'll tip my hat to you. Now let's get to the show.
Well, thank you, Nigel. A tip of the hat to you, my dear friend Nigel, who has been an integral part of Me and Paranormal You since the very beginning. Nearly 750 episodes. Can you believe that? And it's not like we've been doing 5 episodes a week, because that'd only be 3 years worth. Here we go. So here we go. There's a lot to ramble on about, as Nigel would say that I do. I want to talk about the Skull experiments a little bit, or the Skull experiment. 1993, the Skull experiment group, the Skull group is what they called themselves. They embarked on a 5-year experiment. And what they were doing is they were using a quote-unquote revolutionary kind of energy to produce tangible objects from the spirit world. There are paranormal experiments taking place all over what's happening? Sorry, there was a bunch of lights going on outside. I am skittish, scattish, Scotty right now. I'm skittish, Scotty right now. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get into the Skull experiment right now, this hot second, because there's other things going on that I feel like I must discuss. I want to talk about how I'll be hitting the road in roughly 24 hours to make my way all around the beautiful state of Florida before ending that trip with a 5-day, 5-night, or was it 6-day, 5-night trip to the Florida location to continue the paranormal investigation that's ongoing there. I'm going to talk about the focuses of said expedition. We're calling it, the May 2024 trip. We already had a January 2024 trip. So the May 2024 trip has slightly different objectives that we will be investigating and hopefully executing. Wow, it's getting windy out there. The winds of change are blowing wild and free. So anyway, there's too many different things going on simultaneously in my brain. But I will tell you these. Oh, okay. No. We're not transitioning mid-word into a different person. As you know, I've been editing a documentary entitled FITS, which is an acronym for Fits in the Sky, or Friends in the Sky. the investigation at Mutilation Ranch. Now, I believe I posted a clip probably a while ago over on the Patreon page. It's kind of like a sneak peek at the documentary. I'm going to post another one, probably late tonight or tomorrow, depending on when you listen or when I get around to doing it. I've got roughly 35. I've got a rough cut of about 35 minutes of this documentary. I've been really just kind of diving into it. I've been doing nothing else for the most part, nothing else. A little stand up here and there, and trying to get the bulk of this work completed. So, without going into great detail, I'll tell you a couple nights ago. Really, you dive into a project like this and spooky things start happening. So I'm working on a section of the documentary where a spirit's name comes up, and I'm listening to that person's name be said by Greg and Mama Sue, who are the subjects who are having sit down, who we had them sit down for interviews on camera, and I'm isolating the very specific section where they're saying the spirit's name once it was given to them, once they discovered the spirit's name. And it's a very specific name. And as I'm doing that, I just got this new phone. I got the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I'm not trying to brag. It's on credit. Okay. The reason I had to get this phone, is a strong word, but I think it's applicable here. Because it has the camera that can do LiDAR 3D scanning, which I need for the expedition in a few weeks or a couple weeks. In case we come across tracks out in the wild, I want to be at least attempting to 3D scan big footprints and then print them on 3D printers. Instead of doing plaster of Paris and all that stuff, these things can break so easily, blah, blah, blah. My hope is that with this new technology, especially on the new iPhone cameras, which are bonkers good, and with the specific LiDAR apps that are out there, and there's a zoo archaeologist who is pointing us in the right direction as far as like the app to use and things like that. I'll get into more about that later in the future, who will be joining us on the Florida trip. So, if you're wondering what does that mean, it means someone who, from what I've been, my very vague understanding is identifying animal remains, bone remains, things like that, prints as well. Expertise in that area. So, what was I talking about? Okay, so I'm isolating this very specific part of the footage where Greg and Mama Sue are saying this spirit's name. This new phone that I have right next to me on this desk where I'm doing the editing at about 12:15 in the morning, East Coast time, Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Saving, whatever it is, Eastern Time. These new phones are much louder with their ringers, and I hadn't turned it down or the volume down or something like that or whatever. My phone starts ringing right next to me. It startles me because it's so loud. It's an unknown number from Los Angeles, California. So I think it might be somebody I know gets a new phone. I sent him the voicemail because we'll figure that out later. I don't answer numbers I don't know. I step away for a few moments. I come back and I listen to the voicemail as I'm looking at the transcription. And it is someone I don't know calling the wrong number, looking for someone who has the same name as the spirit name that was being given to Greg and Mama Sue that I was isolating. So to be very clear, I was editing in the moment. It wasn't like 15 minutes ago, I was just editing them saying this name. As I was literally looking at my computer screen, listening to the name be said, my phone rang. Someone leaving a voicemail message for someone of that same name, speaking in Spanish, which is exactly what you would expect, knowing the details of what I'm doing in the documentary. So I am just a little bit beside myself. So I text the group thread. But that's not enough for me. I text a group thread, then I text another friend of mine who I know she's going to be awake. She was not, but then she was. Anyway, I'm freaked out, right? I'm having a freak out situation where I'm just like, this is so wild. What are the chances of this happening? The coincidences, the synchronicity here, and then I start just hearing noises all around this house, which, by the way, at that moment was empty except for me. The house was completely empty except for me on this particular night. And super late, I'm hearing noises. Someone's calling my phone, leaving a message for someone of the same name of the spirit that I'm editing a section about in this documentary. And I'm just like, I keep expecting to see, when you get really, if you're like me, if you're anything like me, you get creeped out or you get into that vibe, you get into that paranormal vibe. And every time you just expect to see some kind of shadow figure or figure of some kind, shadow or flesh, otherwise, or other, walk up to every window you're looking at, just to come walk up and look at you. We don't think logically in those moments. It's not a logical thought, right? Necessarily, because what are they doing? What are these magical, mystical, paranormal, supernatural, interdimensional creatures doing? They're just waiting for a moment to walk up to a window when you're already kind of freaked out, just to stare at you. Is that their life's purpose? Just to walk up to windows and look into them at people who were thinking about them that they already knew were thinking about them, kind of? That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? When I say it like that, I just feel so silly. Oh boy. But luckily, feeling silly is my job. So, my heart is racing right now. Am I drinking too much caffeine too late in the night? I am just getting so jacked up. Because I got a lot of work to get done tonight. Editing, packing, cleaning, things like that. So, we're here for it. So that happens, and I'm just freaked out. So cut to about, 2:30, 2:45, close to 3 in the morning. I'm like, I got to stop. I got to stop editing. I can't keep doing this. This section is a very difficult section for other reasons, because of some of the content that's involved is tragic, and it's disturbing and upsetting. And we're talking about people's lives, and we're talking about the tragedy of death, and we're talking about the tragedy of crimes committed to people before they're even dead. And it's heavy stuff. And then throw on top the paranormal things that I believe kind of are happening potentially around me. I'm like, I gotta go to bed. I gotta watch an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm before I fall asleep, just to try to clear my mind and get into a funny space, right? I mean, because who doesn't want to watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? So that's my new thing now. And luckily, I have not seen very many episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which sounds like, a crime against comedy if you're a comedian. But it's just something I never really watched. And most of it has to do with the fact that I've never for prolonged periods, for the most part, had HBO. So I've never really watched. And I don't know. Anyway, and when your life is comedy, I don't know. I love watching things that aren't comedy. I mean, I love watching comedy as well, obviously, and that's what I do for a living. And I've seen more live comedy shows than most people alive. That's for sure. Over 22 years, but it's not something I ever really seek out. When something has way too many seasons, it intimidates me. I've watched a handful of 30 Rock episodes, and those are funny. But I haven't watched every episode of 30 Rock. Anyway, so now I've got Curb Your Enthusiasm. I realized is a perfect palate cleanser if I'm feeling the creeps. If I'm feeling the creeps, If I'm feeling, spooky, I need to sleep, or there's too much dark imagery in my mind from watching like some kind of other like dramatic series that's just like dark and fucking brutal in its content. Throw in some Curb, Curb will get you there. Like, Curb gets me there. Transitions. Next thing you know, I'm laughing out loud, which is the complete opposite state of being afraid for me. So I watch an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then I'm lights out. Who knows what time it is, right? I mean, what is time? Time doesn't matter to me. So if I'm falling asleep at 10 o'clock at night or 4:30 in the morning, it doesn't really matter. There's certain things I know I have to be awake for to go do, and like I had my windshield replaced, I had new tires put on my car, and because I'm getting, making these road trips coming up and putting a lot of mileage on my car, and it's almost at 300,000. I'm so excited. Instead of buying a new car, which I was going to do, I decided just to invest a little bit of money into this old one. I think it's going to be the right choice. So cut to the next day, I wake up, everything's fine. I'm still feeling a little weird, right? Because I also it had just been the eclipse, and I had just spent 12 hours at Poasttown Elementary School, where, the activity is off the charts all the time, let alone on the night of an eclipse or the day of an eclipse. And so we go there. I'm there with Eric Connor of Epic Paranormal and, and his gal, and and Daryl and Brenda, the caretakers of the place, and we have a great time. And the eclipse was magical. And then we investigate, all evening, all night long till about, 11 o'clock at night. We're there. So I'm there for almost 11 hours, I think, total at Poasttown, or close to it. Ton of investigation. We were on Eric's live stream. If you don't follow Eric Connor, you have to give a follow over on TikTok. Also on YouTube. He live streams on TikTok and YouTube. I don't think he does it on Instagram. So Epic Paranormal, go find him. He's always going live. And he'll be in Florida as well here in a few weeks. He'll be returning with us. So one of my favorite people. Love investigating with Eric. Always such a fun time. And so this was on the heels. So let's say the eclipse was Monday, because it was. So Tuesday night is when the phone call thing happens. Cut to Wednesday. I wake up. I'm still feeling a little creepy. I don't sleep well. I'm probably up at 10:30 in the morning. So I'm looking at maybe 6 hours in bed of sleep and, off and on. So, I don't know. I'm lucky if I got 5.5 hours. Feeling a little creepy. I'm taking a shower later that night. And then the bathroom lights just start going bonkers. I'm in the shower, and I say to the spirit, I address the spirit by her name, and I say, if this is you, can we please wait until I'm out of the shower and cleaned up and dressed to discuss whatever it is you want to have, whatever you want to discuss with me? And if you're okay with that, please make the lights stop. Make the lights just go back to normal. And then the second I say that, the lights just stop flickering. And I'm just like, oh my God, here we go. And then I have a friend tell me, oh, you got to do a seance ASAP. She's trying to get a message to you. And I'm just like, oh, gosh. I mean, who's got, and it's funny because I had just, and I can't wait to share this with you, but it's going to be a couple weeks. My buddy, Melissa St. Hilaire, American Witch 13, she's got a new book coming out. We did an interview the other day, and we were talking about seance. The last official seance I attended was at her house with some friends of mine. 4 years ago now, probably, at least. Golly gee, at least 4 years ago. It was a really, really fun time. I think there was 5 of us there. It was a really great time. And so, it actually might have been the same day that, my friend told me to do the seance. Might have been later in the night after I'd already talked to Melissa. Anyway, no. I talked to Melissa last week. So on Friday. So anyway, the point is that light was kind of acting funky already. So I can't attribute, I'm not willing to say that the spirit was affecting my lights, and no message has been delivered to me in a clear and concise way. But things are getting spooky. The further along this documentary, the further along in the work of this documentary that I go, and the more work that I get done, the spookier things are getting. The ghost is in the machine 100%. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more. Gosh, I can't believe it's already been 20 minutes of me rambling. Nigel would be very proud of me, probably more proud of himself for being so accurate in his description of my ramblings. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you all these episodes and more. So all these episodes ad-free, plus a lot more. Your support goes a long way. $3 a month is, I would say it's pennies on the dollar, but it's pennies on multiple dollars. $3 a month if you appreciate all the content and the work that goes into putting out the show for 10 plus years. Go ahead and support the show and support me. You're directly supporting me. And there's a supporter over on the Spreaker.com page. Thank you as well. Spreaker does take a little chunk of that, but still it's appreciated. So thank you. It's a $3. There's a $3 supporters club over there as well. Anyway, your support is much appreciated. So thank you very, very much. Especially all the new patrons that have jumped on recently, and also the ones who've been around for a long, long time. Wow, some OGs over there. It really touches me. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back. And we're back. I'm surprised Nigel didn't pop in. No, and this is not me asking you to pop in, so please stay in the booth. Thank you. So things are getting spooky around here. The further along I get in the work of the documentary of Fitz, putting that together, the creepier and the crazier things are getting. The ghost in the machine seems to be getting louder. I'm very excited about the progress that's been made on this. This is a large undertaking, and I can't wait to share it with you. I have decided in this moment, as I'm speaking right now, that I'll do my darndest by the end of, let's see here. By the time next Tuesday's episode comes out, which is an incredible interview that I've got coming up that I'm very excited to share with you with Dr. Rebecca Foster, you're going to love this chat. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. And spoiler alert, she's going to be joining us in Florida for a couple of days, joining the investigation. So anyway, so that's breaking news that has just happened. But so by next Tuesday, I will have a version. I will give you a progress version for patrons. You'll have to be at least $3 at the $3 tier to see this, but I'll probably put up a 30-minute version. I want to make sure I go and try to balance out at least some of the audio for you before making you watch that, before putting that up, and that's quite an undertaking. So that's why I'm giving myself till next Tuesday to do it instead of doing it tonight, because I'm not going to put up something that has audio levels jumping all over for you, so you're like, I can't hear, and then it's yelling. I think we all hate when that happens. So I'm probably next Tuesday, I'll give you a tease of that. It's not going to be a complete where I'm at so far along the process, as much as it's going to be a chunk of it. You don't want to give away the whole thing, right? But I'm going to give you a nice chunk of it, so you can just kind of see. You can kind of see the voluminous. Am I saying that correctly? Like voluminous. The voluminous amount of footage that is going into making this documentary is bonkers. It's Bonk City, USA population, this doc. Because what you need to understand when it comes to the Fitz investigation of Mutilation Ranch with Greg Feinman and Mama Sue and Dan Lindholm and, I guess myself and Ed Brown as well now have been brought into it. You have Greg would always have a body cam on. He would always have a dashboard camera on his car pointing into the car and out onto the road. Mama Sue would always have a body cam on. Then he would always be carrying at least one other camera and oftentimes would have another camera set up on a tripod. So we're talking, 2 body cams, 2 dash cams, and 2 handheld cams potentially. So we're talking 5 or 6 cameras at any given time running simultaneously. Now, what's interesting too about the editing process of this documentary is that there is certain footage that is inaccessible. I've talked about that previously on the show, about how Greg couldn't get into his computer. It just stopped working. And so he took it to the computer cowboy, and the computer cowboy said there was government level encryption on his files on his computer, which baffled Greg because he's like, why would that be there? So there are certain moments that I have been unable to access, that Greg can't get a hold of, that I can't get a hold of, that he did have on film, but we're working around that. And there's still plenty of, there's so much to dig your teeth into. So I'm excited. I'll show that to the patrons, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Just make sure you're at the $3 or higher setting if you want to get some of that. So anyway, that's what I've been consumed by most recently, and also planning the Florida investigation. So let's dig into that a little bit, because I'm getting ready to be traveling in about 36 hours. I'll be traveling, and I've got the next couple weeks planned out for the podcast, but after that, it's gonna be a little dicey for me before I move into my new apartment in Los Angeles. So, we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping to still get at least 1, if not 2 episodes out for you every week. But I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know how that's going to work, is what I'm saying. So, I must have had some caffeine. I'm talking a mile a minute. We're going back to Florida. I'm very excited about that. We're bringing the team that was there. For the most part, most everybody can return. And we're mixing things up a little bit as well. It's always nice to have some new voices involved. Dr. Rebecca Foster will be joining us for a couple days and a couple nights, and you'll get to meet her next week on the program. So it's gonna be great. The objectives are different. Last time, I think I may or may not have discussed the objectives of the investigation or the expedition. I have already sent out an itinerary to the team outlining what we'll be doing, for the most part, kind of loosey-goosey for the 5 days that we're there. It's always nice to have a plan, a schedule, objectives clearly stated, and other miscellaneous things, like things you learn by doing this over and over and over again is like, hey, everybody, before we get going, let's get everybody to put their cameras on 30 frame rate, 30 frames per second. Let's get that frame rate the same on everybody's camera, so the footage all looks the same and it all syncs up with each other, time-wise. So if we both record a 1-minute clip, that 1-minute clip's going to sync up with the other 1-minute clip, right? Because you want the frame rates to be, technical stuff that, might slip through the cracks sometimes. So the main objective of any investigation that happens at the Florida location is to find answers for the homeowners and to try to provide clarity and information about the phenomena that is occurring in their house and around their property, so they can have a better understanding and also feel validated in their experiences. And I think that's important. And I think all of us know that none of us, even though we can be, none of us desire to be islands alone in our experience, trying to validate ourselves over and over and over again. It's nice to have, there's comfort in community, as we like to say over here on the show. So that is the number one overarching goal of the investigation. Number two, we are going to be diving into portal communication, and I just had this thought pop into my brain at the beginnings of the Mindcast, 10 plus years ago. The third year bonuses typically were I guess they were more informative than they were narrative, if that makes sense. Topics, I would dive deep into topics or things I was reading or, things I was learning about. And, at least lately, they seem to feel more narrative, like there is a storyline happening. There's interviews happening on the main timeline of the experiences of all kinds of things. And the third year bonuses just kind of seem to be audio diaries of my paranormal investigations. I hope you find that enjoyable and, informative to some degree. Because here's the thing. And I talk about this in a conversation with Melissa St. Hilaire that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I get super excited during the conversation about it because, her book it's great. You're going to learn all about it. Anyway, at the end of the day, paranormal investigations, we're trying to communicate with the dead oftentimes, spirits or ghosts or entities or alien intelligences. But specifically when it comes to trying to talk to the dead, trying to communicate with those who are no longer in the physical form, the after form, it is exciting when you get things that are confirming that there seems to be, at least from the best we can tell and gauge from our rudimentary skill set and language abilities, we have confirmation and communication with those in the after form. That is so mind-blowing and exciting. And you do it over and over and over and over again, and maybe sometimes you get into a little bit of a routine about it. But let us not forget just how thrilling, exciting, and mind-blowing it is to get confirmation from something. We did a dance inside Poasttown Elementary School's hallway, in the mean teacher hallway, on the night of the eclipse. Eric and I were in that hallway, and there was a real playful energy at one point before I went and I did something that really effed it all up. But we can talk about that later, maybe. We were literally doing a dance, and I would say, we'll take 3 steps, you take 3. And we would walk 1, 2, 3, and then we'd stop. And then you would hear noise, gung, gung, gung. And I'd say, and then we were like, oh, we heard that. We'll take 3, you take 3. And then we'd take 3 more steps, and then we'd stop and we'd hear, we'd hear noise. And it was really, really cool. And then I don't know what happened. And I think Eric will post the live stream feeds later. So you can watch them. But towards the end of the night, we're in the mean teacher's room in Poasttown, and after we just had all this very fun, playful energy happening for an extended period of time, and all of a sudden, I'm compelled to be looking down the hallway, and I start whistling, and some of you are probably like, "Wait, you what?" And you're probably right. I had no intention to whistle. I didn't even think I should whistle right now, or I should do the whistle experiment right now. And to say that, whistling is a very divisive topic or a hot, a very controversial thing to be doing in paranormal investigations might be an understatement. Some people call it the whistle experiment. Some people say the whistling game. When you're out in the woods, when we're out, Bigfooting or squatching or whatever, I do whistle from time to time out there for sure, trying to get mimic, trying to hear it back, or trying to see what can happen via communication. For some reason, I do that in the hallway. It just came out of my. I don't know how it happened. I just start whistling down the hallway, and Eric's like, "Are you whistling right now? What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. It just happened." And then, and then Eric's like, "Okay, let's officially do like the whistle experiment, even though it always changes the energy. Sometimes it goes very dark. Sometimes after doing this, and he does the whistle, and then it's just dark, and then the energy is just." It is dark energy after that. And it is fun and games were over. And I actually became quite creeped out. And, was it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Who knows? definitely got pretty Creep City, USA population. This guy, after the whistling just happened, part of me wonders if I was given the idea to whistle by the thing that wanted me to whistle, so it could kind of like, so it could join us. And I have never, in all of my paranormal investigations, as far as like when it comes to ghosts, entities, and spirits, I don't know if I've ever, in a haunted location, I don't know, in all these years, I don't know if I've ever whistled. I don't think I have until Monday night at the Eclipse. So it was strange for me. It was uncharacteristic. It's not something I ever do in a haunted location. And it makes me wonder, why did it happen? Maybe it wasn't even my idea, if that makes sense. So anyway, so that was Monday, right? So I was talking about, getting back to Florida, and then I had the idea like, oh, these things have changed from informative to narrative, and maybe hopefully they're still informative to some degree, but it's kind of like, it's not testimony of. I suppose it is. I don't. It's not I'm not testifying or anything like that, but it is. It's kind of it's a verbal record of my journey into the, because when I first started this paranormal, I just wanted answers. I wanted information. I wanted answers, and the investigations kicked off, and you find yourself swallowed by something that is endlessly fascinating, and it just leads to more fascination, wanting more answers. Curiosity continues to grow. And I was actually just chatting with a friend of mine about this the other day. Curiosity keeps us young. I do believe that. I believe curiosity keeps us young. Not in a, you're still attractive and beautiful and sexy kind of young, but I'm talking in spirit, energetically. Typically, when we think of the young, we associate that with having boundless energy, the boundless energy of youth. This is what I mean. I am fighting against the idea of quietly drifting off into the after form with less and less energy the closer and closer I get to that precipice, or to, the idea is to live life to the fullest, live more, love more, and, live better, live more, love better, love more. These are the tenets that we're, these are the pillars of a life that we're trying to build. So curiosity is important in fostering those things. It's almost like living and loving are the plants, and curiosity is one of the many pitchers of water that we can use to water those plants to help them grow. And the more you look into the paranormal, the more I look into the paranormal, the more curious I become, the more exploration I find is needed. I have found myself putting things on back burners that 15, 20 years ago, I would have been like, there's no way I would ever delay this, even for a moment, to do something else. And, it's a rearranging of priorities. It's an understanding that there are certain people you come in contact with and who let you into their lives, and you begin an investigation surrounding the strange events that occur in their lives, and you become highly motivated to provide answers for those people, even more so than yourself, but also for yourself, out of, to satisfy that curiosity of the phenomena and the nature of the phenomena in general. But you realize these are, as my buddy Jim Perry would say, these paranormal stories are human stories. These are human lives. These are human beings affected, oftentimes in stressful, anxious, and or negative ways by unexplainable phenomena or phenomena that has yet to be defined in a comfortable way for society to embrace it as part of everyday life and as part of the universe as we know it. The understood you. I hope I can remember this. The understood you, which is one of my favorite grammar terms, but I'm not talking about the understood YOU, which is, hey, put that down, where you don't have to say, hey, you, put that down, because the you is understood. It's the understood you. I'm talking about the understood capital U, as in universe. The understood you. In the world of the paranormal, the supernatural, the mystical, and the esoteric, we understand that these things are part of the universe. It is part of our understood you. The goal here, through investigation and the presentation of evidence, is to have other people embrace the understood you, which we have embraced. That includes paranormal, supernatural phenomena. So on this journey that we are all embarked upon, sometimes the waters get choppy and sometimes the sailing is smooth. At the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. And whether or not we're trying to find land or we are sailing away from the shore, it doesn't really matter. The direction is forward, no matter which direction you're going. Once we have presented enough evidence and proven or shown these things to be real and part of everyday life, the world will come around. The world will embrace the understood you that those of us in the world of the paranormal and the experiencers already understand. That is the idea. Is that too green in nature to think that way? Is it nebbish? Well, that's a word that I don't know if I've ever used. Is it too nebbish? Is it too optimistic or immature to think that it's just that simple? I don't know. That is a goal to strive toward. It is not a must-have or my life is a failure. Can we, one by one, acknowledge in ourselves that we don't know all this stuff? And can we, in tandem with that acknowledgement of lack of information or lack of knowledge, can we open ourselves up to the mysteries and the information that others present to us to help build and to help create a better understanding of the world in general? I think too often, many of us in the world of the paranormal think, well, we're the ones out here. We're the ones out here on the forefront. We're the ones out here on the fringes. You don't have to open my mind, my friend. My mind is so open, my brains fall out. We think that, hey, don't tell me that I need to open my mind. Do you understand what I do? I open mind for a living. That's not where I want to be. Although I'm going to admit I have been there in my mindset sometimes. So that's not where I want to be. I don't think it's so simple as one video or 10 videos or one scientific experiment being so definitive and so profound that it changes the minds of the entire world who were resistant or withholding belief about paranormal phenomena. I don't think it's the UFO landing on the White House lawn moment, which, quite frankly, anymore, would not convince the entire world, let alone the entire country, that it's real. But that's something we don't need to worry about. Why concern ourselves with such things that are beyond our control? Other people deciding something or choosing something. We don't want to take away other people's choice. Do you hear me, Arizona? Anyway, we're going to be right back. I'm going to take that was a nice little jab there at Arizona that just show, if you want to know how outdated some of these ideas are, just look about when was the law instituted? 1864, I believe, was the year. Wow, if you're going back to a law from the year 1864, you are grasping, desperately grasping at straws to try to maintain some kind of, illusion of authority. So we're going to be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials. You don't have to worry about this. You'll be hearing me talk in about 3 seconds. And we're back. I'm not sure what the commercials are, but you can always just hit fast forward. Don't forget about that. Anyway, okay, so am I supposed to be saying that? Okay, I got to catch my breath. So we're talking about the understood you. And we're talking about how there's probably no grand piece of evidence, no singular piece of evidence, video or otherwise, that would go about just instantly transforming the world's beliefs overnight. I don't think that's what this is about, and I don't think most paranormal investigators, I don't think if you talked to most parapsychologists, I don't think they would have the delusion of such a thing being reality. Now, that is not to say that it's not something to strive toward, like we were mentioning earlier. I do think that at some point there will be such a definitive parapsychological test in a controlled laboratory environment that it'll be indisputable to, all the peers. It'll be peer reviewed. It will be definitive, and it will be profound. And that's not to say that there haven't already been such experiments or things done that definitively show that psi phenomena is a reality. You talk to psychologists and parapsychologists alike, and they will, at least the psychologists that have an interest in this and are open-minded to it, and they will say oftentimes you'll hear this, very compelling evidence. That is a phrase that I love hearing from a scientifically minded materialist, because what that means is crack, go to skeptical foundations. Now, the health inspector will not pass your skeptical building. You've got too many cracks in your foundation now because of very compelling evidence that psi phenomena is real. I've always loved how believing that it's possible influences the results. Now, scientifically minded people might hear that and cringe a little bit, but, I just always loved that. Isn't that delightful? That believing in something, believing in the possibility of something, makes that thing more prevalent. Now, if you are looking for evidence, scientific evidence of manifestation, of willing your future into existence, look no further than said thing. Than said thing? Is that specific enough? Is it even correct in what I said? I believe it was, which means it probably was, because I've chosen to believe it. Now, I just find it delightful that thinking something is possible and wanting it to be real makes it more possible. Now, I believe there are parameters to such a thing to a certain degree. Okay, so let's not get carried away and just apply this to everything across the board, which who am I to say? Who am I to say? But I started off this third-year bonus thinking that we were going to get into the skull experiment. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the skull experiment. To me, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And you will be able to probably see that there have been filmmakers and, creators of television and film who clearly have been influenced by the skull experiment, whether they are referencing it or not, potentially, I believe. Because the information about the skull experiment's been out for quite a while. I actually have, I should have brought this up before I started talking about it on my computer, but there are, give me 1 second, I'm going to be right back on the mic here before I say things that are totally wrong in regards to whether or not I got these files. Okay, I do have a couple audio clips. I'm not going to throw them in there because I'm going to look into it a little bit before. I'm not just going to be throwing other people's audio into my show because there's advertisements on this program. I'm not trying to profit off of other people's stuff. I have reposted things in the past that were not mine, but I'm pretty sure I've disabled ads on those. At least I believe I have. At least I've damn tried to. So in 1993, the Skull Experimental Group, also known just as the Skull Group, they embarked on a 5-year experiment using a revolutionary kind of energy to produce tangible objects from the spirit world. I'm taking this directly from the skullexperiment.com. You can go to the website and you can learn more about Robin Foy, Sandra Foy, Diana Bennett, and Alan Bennett. Two couples. The Bennetts were mediums and the Foys were observers. Anyway, so the term what they were trying to do is they were using a revolutionary kind of energy to produce tangible objects from the spirit world. Are we talking about apportation? I believe I think we are, if I'm remembering the definition of apportation correctly. Things appearing, physical objects appearing. So the tangible objects means things recognizable to our senses or the instruments they were using. Visible manifestations, lights, sounds, touches, tastes, and smells. So maybe we're not talking about apportation. Apportation are physical objects that will appear, seemingly out of thin air. So they're talking about tangible objects. So visible manifestations, lights, sounds, touches, tastes, and smells. So it sounds like they're talking about the things that affect the senses, right? So some of the tangible objects took the form of messages transmitted onto photographic film, audio tape, and videotape. The aim of the Skull Experimental Group was to produce not just one tangible object, but such a huge number and variety that scientists would have to sit up and take notice. There is the familiarity of messaging that paranormal investigators, parapsychologists, and researchers alike are familiar with. Scientists would have to sit up and take notice. You will probably not remember as clearly as I do, but gosh, it's probably been a couple years now since my conversation with Jessica and Oscar. And Oscar was letting me know that the future of paranormal and, or at least in my own research and my own findings and et cetera, we don't need to rely on validation from the scientific community because there is something much older that can do that for us. And my intuition has always been, since hearing that message from Oscar and Jessica, was Hermeticism. So anyway, back to the skull experiment. In fact, this is from their website in the About section. It was not long before a variety of senior scientists, including some very experienced researchers into the unknown, became interested in the phenomena being produced. The Skoll Group was happy to allow scientific scrutiny of their work, a fact which impressed the scrutineers. Ooh, what a name, the scrutineers. We're the scrutineers. We're here to scrutinize. So scoot on over. They took their experimental sessions everywhere. They took them all over the world to many different people, different countries, including Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, Spain, Switzerland, and the United States. They assessed and reviewed the work. Dr. Ulf Israelson, Dr. Hans-Peter Studer, Dr. Theo Locher, Dr. Andreas Lipte-Wagner, and Dr. Paul Kurthi were some of the investigators who assessed and reviewed the work. Oh, I got to do a proper thing on this, right? We got to do like a full-on proper Skoll experiment thing. Maybe I'll see if I can find, maybe just throw in a couple snippets of seconds of audio, reach out to the Skoll experimenters themselves, and see if we can't just do like a 3-parter on this, because it's been a minute, but for a minute, it's been a little while since I first discovered this. It's been years, but I even remember being obsessed with this. So we're gonna get back into it. I hope you're doing well. Come see me do live stand-up comedy sometime. RyanStannerComedy.com/tour. You can see some dates. For starting to book some dates for the summer and then for later on. I love you. I hope you love yourself. You deserve it. Okay. A total eclipse of the heart. That's what you need to have for yourself. I hope to see you somewhere. And if I don't, I'll just see you here at the watering hole on the astral plane.